guys. Welcome back to the ProPhysique Prep Series podcast. So today, if you are not watching us on YouTube, you have not picked up, we are missing Paul. He is on a trip, a vacation. Well, he's on a cruise right now with 3 kids. He says it's not much of a vacation, but Paul is not with us today, but we do have a special guest. So you have your usuals, Evan and myself, and then we are joined by Danika. How are you, Danika?
I'm doing good. I'm so happy to be on. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are excited to bring you on today because I think you're going to offer a lot of great insight to the topic we're going to talk about today. And we're going to really dive into the topic of kind of that transition from prep to improvement season or off season or whatever you want to call it. Because I don't think that, I think everybody, even if you are a seasoned competitor, I think everybody struggles to some degree, kind of with that transition. So I think that bringing you on and tying a lot of like your psychology background into it will be really helpful for the listeners to hear about. How are you though, Evan? I haven't asked. How are you?
Me? Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Trying to
I like the glasses.
stay awake a little bit. Yeah, my eyes are tired. I've been staring at the computer screen so much. I'm trying to like be smart and wear like my little blue light blockers and stuff like that.
I like it. They're I don't know. I like the look. They look nice. Yeah.
Yeah, make me look distinguished, right?
Yes, and very studious.
Like I can read and write my own name finally.
Yeah.
It's all about having goals. Yeah.
It's so funny because the past couple weeks, like ever since your show, you seem like you're coming back to life. I feel like
getting there.
It's like you're 1-2 week out. You could just tell you were so done. Like you were so just like, I know you were running on barely any energy.
Yeah, it was busy. It was a lot. And then I'm a little tired. Just last weekend, I had 7 people competing on Saturday. And then 3 were on the West Coast. So, those are fun, right? Because you don't go to bed until later and you're setting your alarms if you do fall asleep to wake up and check your phone and everything. So yeah, it was a long week. I do a lot of like check-ins on peak week too. So it was just kind of a long week on that side of things, but everyone did really well. So got close to a pro card win, like right there. But
really, what show was it?
The Caribbean Grand Prix.
Oh, I forgot about that one. How was that? Did your competitor like that show? I mean, it's got to be amazing.
I haven't talked to her too much since then. A little bit here and there. We'll talk here in a few days when she kind of gets back and gets settled and everything. But it was good. She ended up getting second in her class. She's very impressive, and she got second in her class. But the girl won the overall from her class. So
nice.
If you're going to get a loss, that's one to get, I guess, on that one.
Absolutely. It was kind of funny because I went to an OCB show this weekend, and it was like maybe the second OCB show I've ever been to, but it's the one that Paul used to promote. I forgot.
The one in Tampa?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a guy in that one too.
Did you really? Oh, I didn't even know that. And because Paul called me afterwards, he just wanted to know how it went. But I remember the days when he used to promote it. It seems like it was forever ago, but it's obviously different when you go to those. Like it was very different because I've been to a lot of NPC shows recently, and like, oh my God, it was so like chill backstage. It was just, I don't know, it just felt so much different. Like in a good way, not in a bad way. It was just very different.
I like how a lot of them run their shows too, how it's like guys in the morning, females in the afternoon. And this one, I know males are in the afternoon. I know it ran long because I think my guy didn't, I think he started, I think he didn't hit stage like 5:30 was when his first time he was on stage was.
They ran it, like, I like how they ran it too, because they had like segments. So like the females, I think they said they were running like 20 to 30 minutes behind by the end of the day. But like the females, my client, they told her, you're going to go on between 2 and 4. And like they have each kind of segment going on in a window. But yeah, the guys went on after that, or one of the men's divisions did at least. And so it was a longer night for them. And I know Coach Ben, I actually saw him too, because he competed at the night show.
That's right. Yeah.
So, for sure. Yeah.
I like how they do it. A lot of what's funny is a lot of the Northeast too, because I have a female client of mine that competes a lot, like in the not Northeast, but kind of like upper East Coast, like Virginia, Maryland, that kind of area. And a lot of the ways they do it too, it's like all guys in the morning, prejudging and finals. And this is in PC too. And in females, prejudging and finals right after that. I'm like, oh God, it's so nice. Like, I would love that.
Yeah, I wish they did that at every show. Like, I mean, and as a competitor, like you guys know, as competitors, like it's such a like in the middle of the day, it's like, what do
There's
you
so much wasted time.
do anything? It's not like you can go really work out like and break a sweat. You can't mess up, as a girl, you can't mess up the glam. Like you just end up sitting around and kind of twiddling your thumbs. So
unless there's a unless there's a pro show
Yeah.
associated with it, I think they should just roll through with like an hour break and then roll straight into the finals for the NPC show. I think everyone would like it far more if
I
that was the
100%.
case.
Do you think it's honestly just like from a money standpoint?
Yeah.
Just that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna sell more tickets if it's later on in the day, and people, it's that'd be my guess with it. And it is a business, right? So you have to think about it from that aspect on things. So I don't promote shows, obviously. So it's easy to have opinions when you don't know all the inner workings of things.
100%. 100%. And like before we dive into our topic, I think it'd be really cool too. I've been talking with Paul about like some special guests we can get on. I think it'd be cool. We could maybe have a promoter's standpoint, somebody like Joe Pashkula.
That'd be great.
Yeah, because I know Paul and I have been talking about getting either like Sandy or Becky on. They'd be a great judge to have on, but I think it'd be cool to have a promoter too. So
that'd be really great actually to ask some questions like that. Like, why do you do things like this? Like some questions that a lot of times don't make a lot of sense to us. Like, that's why I like how Tyler does the judging feedback now on a lot of the videos, right? On a lot of the shows, right? Because when you see it, you're like, how in God's green earth did this happen or this happen? And as soon as someone explains it, you're like, oh, makes sense.
Yes.
I see it. Okay, cool. On the same page now. I can buy that. So.
Obviously, there's a reason behind the things that they do. So yeah, I think it'd be cool to have like I think we could get Joe Pashkula on probably pretty easily. So yeah, cool. Well, let's dive into our topic. So where do you guys want to start with this one? Or I guess Danika, do you want to kind of take the reign here? Where do you want to start with talking about like that transition from prep to improvement season? I guess tell us kind of what you see being, I don't know, start wherever you feel like is necessary.
Yeah, I think that, well, this is an awesome topic. And I feel many people struggle here, like to include myself. I've had struggles with the transitional period. I think sometimes it's easier that transition into like a prep is sometimes easier because there's that like glorified dangling carrot that's in front of you and you're like, yes, like the time is on here, I have a timestamp for everything, I got a program, like you're deep into it, so that's easy. I find that that's an easier transition, but then coming from like prep to a build season is a little bit more difficult. But I think a great like area to kind of start with, because you both work mostly with prep clients and you both just came off of preps, I guess what are some of like your struggles, your personal struggles, perhaps like in the past that you've experienced, if any, and where do you typically find there to be most struggles? And then we can kind of dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it'll be really cool because I'm actually really curious to hear like Evan's standpoint on this too, like as a male competitor, because I think the biggest thing that most females struggle with is just that body image, and kind of, switching gears into, okay, for so long, I've deemed wins as like seeing a new low on the scale, seeing new lines, getting smaller and smaller, right? And kind of switching that thought pattern to, okay, that's no longer the goal. And that's no longer what I should be celebrating. I should in fact be celebrating kind of the opposite. I think that's like personally what I've, struggled with and what I think most female clients struggle with. But I guess I'm curious, like Evan, as a male competitor, do you find that you struggle with that? And do you find that your male clients struggle with that at all? Because I feel like it may be a little different.
No, yeah, for sure. Not to the length or that females do with it. Mainly because I do work with a lot of females too, and not for everyone, but a lot of females have strong correlation between that number on a scale. And I don't want to say I don't want to say like self-worth, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of what it turns into, right? Because it's like especially for females in prep, and you work so hard to get down to a certain level and you see that number and it's kind of justification for everything that you've done. And when that number starts going up, a lot of that can kind of, you know, be a struggle. You know, for me, it's not necessarily like the scale. I could give a rat's ass what the scale says on there. I really don't care. It's more like how I look, because I typically get very dry and very hard. And that's a very fun thing to have, to be very dry and very hard. But it's not something that you can keep, right? Here's a good example. Like anyone that saw the guest postings from this past weekend with like Keon Pearson and Sean Clarita, both of them were 1 week off Olympia, both of them guest posed, and both of them walked on stage. You were like, did you compete 6 months ago? Like, that's almost what it looked like with it, because they were so hard and so peeled and so dry on stage. It's impossible to ever keep that. Like, you cannot keep that, right? You can't. Plus the post-show rebound and everything else that kind of goes on with that. And I'm not saying they were like, you know, super sloppy out of shape or anything, but, you know, there's a lot of water retention and things like that that happen after shows, especially if like, you know, any sort of water manipulation kind of went on. But we'll kind of, you know, glance over that once. The, you know, for me, it's more a struggle of the structure of it. Like doing the same things I did before, like getting up, walking. A lot of that stuff that I have to dial back, because if I don't dial that back, I literally will just stay the same weight for forever. So I have to dial that stuff back. So it's more the routine change that's a struggle for me with it. But you know, earlier on in my like competing career, it was more the scale and how I looked, but now it's more kind of the routine portion of it. Newer competitors, the guys I work with, struggle a lot with that though. They do. A lot of them do, especially if they were a little bigger when they started prep and they first time in their life, they get like inside out peeled. they are scared to go back the other way with it. A lot of them are.
Yeah, that's, you know, the routine aspect is, you bring that up, and that's another thing. Like, I feel like I've struggled with that before too, because as weird as it sounds, like deep into prep, I got into my routine in the morning of like, I would walk to crunch and I would do my first round of cardio. And, you know, as much as I didn't love getting up and walking there and starting it, like afterwards, I felt so good. It was like a dopamine rush, right? Then I'd walk home, start my day. And, you know, you get into these routine and you get into these habits, and you know, as weird as it sounds, it's sometimes like they're comforting, and it's hard to sometimes let go of that. You know, I know when I wasn't in prep and I didn't have to do 2 rounds of cardio anymore, letting go of like that walk to crunch in the morning and doing my first round of cardio, it kind of felt weird, and I wasn't getting that dopamine release anymore from, you know, that I would get after I did it. So I feel like letting go of that routine kind of, or not letting go of the entire routine, but letting go of pieces of the routine and not being so extreme can be a little bit of like a mental hurdle as well.
Yeah. And a lot of people could say, well, just keep the routine up. But if you are getting close to a show and you are actually stage lean, then it's going to take up a whole lot of your day. And other things are going to be sacrificed for that, like family time's going to be sacrificed, like time with your significant other, time for yourself. Like those things, you can't keep that structure going all the time, or you will have no life ever. Like, I mean, even when you're in prep, I mean, some things have to take a back seat, right? Like I stopped taking on new clients for a few weeks and cut off my calls and everything, because I literally couldn't handle any more other than what I already had based on my plate with that, right? So it's like people say, oh, well, just keep the structure. You can't, to a certain degree with it, but you can't if you want to thrive. You know, I hate the word thrive. If you want to excel in other aspects of your life as well.
Yeah,
so that can be a struggle.
It's important to remember too, like our brains operate off of like programming, right? And I think that the initial burst, like when you get into a prep initially, there's a lot of like your conscious mind that plays a role into it, because you have to make conscious decisions. Like you have to make the conscious decision to like prep your meals and weigh everything out and be able to like make the conscious choice of like structuring your schedule so that you can get your workouts in and your cardio, and you weigh yourself and you do all these things. And then afterwards, after repeating it for an extended period of time, it just becomes a default. Like that is now no longer conscious. Like you're just doing it. And so it's now in your subconscious mind. It has emotions now attached, right? You wake up, you weigh yourself, the scale goes down, bravo, like good check-in. So now it's attached with emotions. And again, that goes into your subconscious mind of like default this is how I operate, this is how I go. And then you're asking your subconscious mind to change it up like immediately. That doesn't happen like that. Like now you have to be like, oh wait, it's okay if like the scale goes up, or it's okay if this routine isn't like down to the minute anymore. Like you have to really kind of shift and then bring back that conscious mind of like, oh no, we're changing. Like there's a purpose to go in this direction now, but you're working against what you already created, that programming that you already created and you tapped into over and over and over and over again. So it makes sense. Like it makes sense that there's this resistance, like inner resistance that's like, okay, this is supposed to feel good, but it feels kind of off. Like it feels like foreign because I haven't done it for an extended period of time and I've been doing something else, right? So I think that being able to give yourself credit that, sorry, it doesn't just change like that. It isn't a switch, right? And there is going to be some resistance, right? The same, I think that at the Command the Stage, I talked about this, like little things like carrying around a Tupperware container and like having all your meals prepped out, like that doesn't necessarily apply deep into like a building season sometimes, right? So it's okay to have a plate. It's okay to drink out of a glass, like as opposed to a gallon water container. Like it's okay to do those things, even though it feels really natural probably to like grab your Tupperware, grab your gallon container, whatever that may be, right? That became a habit. It became like a program that was structured and you tapped into it. So giving yourself permission to like feel that resistance, but remind yourself that, yeah, now you're going to have to make conscious choices that serve you well and serve you well in the season that you're in now, right? And that does mean kind of rewiring and restructuring a little bit too.
Yeah, that rewiring of the brain, I think, is so important. And I think, I think it would be very beneficial for any kind of like if I think back to what I wish I would have done a little bit differently before I started competing, is I wish I would have worked like with a coach before competing and have gone through like a fat loss phase and reverse diet, because I think I would have been a little bit more accustomed to knowing the differences between the phases, right? Because I think like if your post show is your first experience with ever doing a reverse diet, it can make it a lot harder, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think if getting into the sport of bodybuilding, guess what I'm trying to say here is I did not really realize that there were going to be these different seasons, right? That it wasn't always just going to be prep and fat loss. Like you don't always realize that there's 75% of the other time you should be in a reverse diet or a building phase, right? You shouldn't always be in that diet. So I think it's really important. I mean, if you have the option to do so, working with a coach before prepping and going through a reverse diet to like feel what it feels like, so that way you're a little bit more prepared after your show or after your prep, I think that would be a helpful asset to have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, yeah. I mean, absolutely, for sure. And some things to kind of think about too with that is like the scale needs to go up in most cases, right? Like it needs to go up for health markers, for brain function, for hormones, for everything. It just needs to go up in most cases, right? Like let's consider everyone's like show lean at this point. It needs to go up and change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to think about.
Yeah, I think being able to, I know something that has helped like clients that I've worked with is having that discussion of like the why, like what is the purpose, what is the why of this, and educating them through that, like being able to say, even talking about it during like a prep phase, right? Like exploring what is it going to be like post show and during a build phase, like what do all of these phases kind of look like, so that it's not just this kind of shock to like, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that the scale is going to go up. Well, this is why, like, and talking about it prior to talking about all the phases and educating them of the importance of it, right? We talk about, all right, this is why we're like cutting, this is why we're going through this, whatever prep we're going through, this is what we're doing and the reason behind it. And when you start to educate them a little bit more, I think it does decrease the emotional like immersion, it provides this little like psychological distancing. So then they can then gain perspective and clarity and logic thinking, as opposed to being so emotionally immersed in it and tied into, like how you said, Evan, you had mentioned self-worth, but I think a part of it is too identity, right? Like that's what they like, this is who I am. This is
That's a
what
better
I
way to put it.
about. Yeah. Like this is who I am and who I have become. So then we get like emotionally immersed in like this only kind of box that we fit into. But when we're given more perspective and when we're able to kind of step away a little bit and look at it from like an educational standpoint and the purpose of why we're doing this, and a coach is able to provide that, then we get that emotion kind of detached from it, right? Then we have that clear thinking. Then we can be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's do this.
Yeah. And I think we could, oh, go ahead, Evan.
I think a big part of it too is that a lot of people struggle with is, especially newer competitors that get into this and they document the whole thing on social media. And then a lot of their, like you said, their identity is in the person that's prepping, right? Like they have so much content to put out they're getting better. They're getting more content. That dopamine drip is just coming in from the outside world all the time. They're not just going to the gym and getting people set at the gym. They're getting people, on their social media, commenting on it. And then when that's done, it's not as sexy to do, hey, look how much I'm gaining, right? Or look how much muscle I'm at. It's just not as visually stimulating. And it's not as exciting. And I tell people a lot of times, I try to handle it two different ways. I tell people a lot of times the real prep starts after the show's over. That's when the hardest part is, for a bunch of reasons, right? Like the ghrelin response, the fact that, you've been in a deficit for a while, the fact that you don't have that carrot in the end of the stick. I think I've also noticed that I have people that just work with me for preps have a way harder time with it than people that work with me throughout the year, because how I structure everything in blocks. So we know what's happening in phases here. So I lay it out from after the show. I'm like, okay, we got probably about a 45-day reverse that's going to happen here. Then we're going to roll into a small maintenance phase for this many days. Then we're going to roll into a building phase, then a maintenance phase, and then an evaluation phase. Like I have these phases built out, and in a lot of people's minds, it really helps them to see a roadmap and be like, oh, okay, I have a direction I'm going here with this. It's not just build to infinity, right?
Oh, I 100% agree. I have clients all the time that they want, like a lot of times what I will do is I will set up a phone call with my clients, like when they're wrapping up their season, and we will right off the get-go kind of establish that tentative roadmap. And I say tentative because it can always change, right? And I always tell
it does change. It changes all the time.
It does. It's always nice, I think, to have some sort of like loose or just tentative roadmap to give you some sort of purpose and direction. And I also like new goal setting with clients after their season. Like, okay, what are some goals that you want to work towards now? And not even just strength goals or goals related to your identity as a bodybuilder. Like, what are some other goals you have that may have to do with, your relationships or your career, or just even taking up like new hobbies. I had a client last week tell me like she wanted to learn to crochet. And like, that's obviously something she didn't really have a ton of time for when she was in prep, but that's something she wanted to, work on now that she wasn't in prep. So I always like to kind of set some good goals to also give them that kind of purpose and that direction. But I agree with you, Evan. I think that like my clients that work with me beyond just prep and like year round, I know sometimes it sounds like because we're coaches, we're just saying that, right? But it truly is like those people tend to have not only more successful preps and reverse diets, but also they just tend to be the people that are like happier with their results and with the process too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it is really important to talk about other goals outside of, or to remind them that like you are an athlete through and through, and remember that everything that you have done during a prep, like you can still have a lot of those habits that are gonna really benefit your life in other areas too. Like you're moving your body, you're making sure to hydrate yourself, like you're fueling your body, you're aware of things, like you're making sure that your sleep is really solid, like you're making sure you take rest days when there's too much inflammation happening. Like those things are awesome. And you can apply those things outside of only doing a show. Like you can still do that and you're still an athlete, even if like you're not super lean, like you can still continue course, right? And that is I think that's another, like not even going from a show, but then going into, say somebody does a show and they're like, you know what, that was fun, but it's not for me long term. Going into like life after, or say they've done shows for like 10 years or whatever, and then they're like, I think I'm calling it quits, and I'm just good, like I'm good, I feel accomplished. Transitioning into like not training for a specific sport, but just exercising, like just training. And like you can still have goals, like just because you're not doing a show doesn't mean that like you're still not great, like you're still fantastic, and there's so much more to you outside of just stepping on a stage. And the more that they kind of hear that and recognize it, but let's be honest, it is really hard, like you said, Evan, it's not that cute necessarily or sexy, like, and so, but that becomes like the world that is around you, and you create it as your reality, you talk about it, you post about it, that is your, like, you live it, breathe it, eat it, sleep it, like that is what you do. So making sure that during that time too, maybe you don't talk about it, like maybe I've had some preps where I didn't say a peep during, like, that I was even prepping for a show. Those are really good preps because I focused on other areas of my life, and people had no idea that I was prepping for a show until like a week out, and I was like, yeah, I thought about it, because I didn't put all of like my emotional self and mental self and like my identity wrapped into that. I was able to give focus on other things and have conversations outside of what are my macros, what is my training, constantly like being told, you look great, how many more weeks, you look great, how many more weeks, right? Like sometimes it's important to also give energy to other areas of our life, and that helps with the transition into build season or just lifestyle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, I got a question. This was like a few months ago, from somebody on Instagram, not a client, just somebody that follows me. And she asked me specifically, she's like, I've been in prep for so long. My friends and my family kind of, they know that like that's been my identity for so long. How do you go about when you're no longer in prep? Like, how do you kind of pivot and get them to ask you about things that aren't related to bodybuilding? That was her question. She basically asked, how do I get people to actually ask me other questions, not just relating to who I am as a bodybuilder in prep? So have you ever gotten asked that question before, Danika? Or how to like facilitate conversations and just maybe friendships after prep that aren't just focused on bodybuilding and prep, and talking about that identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think too, you have to give the people in your life like the benefit of the doubt, because if they see for so many years that you like to engage in that certain topic, then they're going to play into that too. So you have to kind of reflect and say, well, what is my role? Like what's my participation rate in this kind of, I want to change it. What is my participation in changing this? Or am I enabling it? Right. So I know for me, like there's been many times, like my in-laws, they've known me for 18 years and they think that me, like I'm an intense person and all I do is train competitors. That is so far from the truth. Like I have like, so for me, I was like, hey guys, like I just thought maybe I'd let you in on a few of my clients that I'm working with and what I'm really proud of. And like I initiated different conversation. And then they were like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. Like we had thought that you only did ... So for those individuals, maybe it's you starting the conversation, or you even saying like, I've been into bodybuilding for an extended period of time, but I'm thinking about changing up my routine a little bit. It was so great and I gained such great experience, but like these are some of the endeavors that I want to go after now. And you spark and initiate that conversation, right? Because then the next time they see you, they're probably going to talk more about that new endeavor, right? Because now you initiated it. So sometimes it is reflecting and saying, what role am I playing in this? Like, am I constantly talking about it? Is that all that I engage in? Is that all who I engage with? Right? Like part of it is being able, it's great. Something that I have benefited from is engaging with people that like have no idea about bodybuilding. I'm like, this is the coolest thing because they talk about Nico Moon and that's all they know. And like, they like country. And when I say like a shoulder press, they're like, I'm sorry, what? Like they have no idea. So that's kind of cool to be able to surround yourself with maybe other interactions too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Now, I always look, and here's the thing too, is bodybuilding, if you're a competitor and you're an active competitor, and like my job is coaching people, right? And I don't just coach competitors, but I have a lot of competitors. And so yeah, it is part of my identity. And that's okay. Like it's okay, but it's not all of who I am. But it is part of it, right? Just like everyone's career is part of their identity. Everyone's passion is part of their identity. But we're in kind of a circumstance where our passion, we're in the lucky circumstance where our passion and kind of our hobby overlaps, or our passion and our career kind of overlaps with that. But I think a lot of people fall into it when they, especially mentally, like for ourselves, if we associate our identity with the bodybuilding and being peeled, those two things together, right?
Yeah.
It's, you kind of can't. And if that is it, you need to figure out why that's such the focus. Is it the external stimulation you're getting from it? Because when you're peeled to the bone, you sure as hell don't feel great, right? So what's the reason?
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, part of what can be really hard when you're transitioning seasons is, there's people that, not even people, a lot of times it's people that aren't even like into bodybuilding and aren't your bodybuilding friends, and they'll make these comments like as they see you gaining weight, and they'll be like, oh my God, you look healthier. And it's like, even though that shouldn't be even though that's not a bad thing, sometimes as bodybuilders we interpret, okay, I look healthier, that means I'm gaining weight. Like, I don't know, like it kind of, it evokes a little bit of panic. Am I gaining too much weight? So sometimes getting those comments as we reverse out from a show and we're starting to actively gain weight, just hearing things like, oh, wow, you look a lot healthier, or, oh, you look a lot different. Like sometimes those comments can be really hard too and mess with our brains as competitors. So I think it's really important to that we, especially if you are a competitor, and you're listening to this, and I think most competitors already know this, but like being careful with those comments that you make towards competitors as they go season to season and as their body changes. Like you just never know. One little thing you say that may not mean any harm could kind of potentially make somebody feel like less of themselves, or just, I don't know, kind of mess with their mind.
And we have to realize too, most people don't understand what it is that we do. So people are going to get comments, right? Like, oh, you look so skinny. My mom used to say that when I would get lean, like, you look skinny. And looking back, yeah, I did look skinny in clothes back then, right? So she wasn't necessarily wrong with that. But Danika, I'd like to get your input on this one too, since this is kind of your wheelhouse with it. I'm really big on cut the like negative self-talk out, period. I had a client yesterday was like, yeah, I knew my lift wasn't going to be good because I missed a workout. I missed my pre-workout meal. I was like, you don't even need to go in here considering, hey, my lift's going to be crappy because I missed that. I was like, glycogen doesn't get up and run away your bodies. You're eating 500 grams, 600 grams of carbs a day. You got plenty of fuel in your body. Trust me on that. And it kind of, shifted his mentality on that. And even stuff I've joked around myself like a ton with this, where I'll step on the scale and be like, I'll even do this in prep, be like, oh, I'm so fat. And it's obviously a joke because, I'm not fat. But I'll even joke around now. Somebody's like, God, I'm a fat ass. I jumped up like 3 pounds a day. I try to not say that type of stuff. Just because like we can't always control what we think, but we can't control what we say. And I truly believe that when you speak it, it gives it power, even if it's in a joking way.
Yeah, absolutely. I am big on letting it exist, but also like making note of it and asking them, like if somebody says, oh, I know like last week I definitely didn't hit all of my macros, so the scale went up. I'll say, okay, that's interesting. Can you tell me that in a different way? What else, what did you hit? Like, what are some things, and can we dial down the negativity knob a little bit? Or did you like take the knob and you were like, what can we do and how can we reframe that just a little bit? Like, tell me it in a little different spin on it and challenge them. Like, acknowledge that, like, hey, that's fine. Like, you're telling me some factual stuff, but you're also making it like so daunting, and like you're carrying it in that like it's just like heavy, and then it dictates the mood and the rest of your behaviors thereafter and how you feel about yourself. So we can make it very factual, and we can say like, this is what happened, this is what happened, but I was able to ... and like tell me something else. I need a little bit more than just the I'm not good enough, or I didn't succeed, or I'm a failure. And going there with them, like, I think is really important, because I do feel that a lot of people don't recognize what they're saying. Like, I think that sometimes it just is automatic, and
it's automatic. It's not thought.
No, it's not like, you know what, I can't wait to say that I'm a fat ass. Yep, gonna say I'm a fat ass. And then you just say it. Like, sometimes it's so automatic in nature that they need that, like, stop, let's pause.
Yeah.
I need you to step back just a little bit, see what kind of happened. Let's have some thoughts around that. And maybe we can reframe it, right? Like, it's almost like when my girls come down in like a piss ass mood, and I'll be like, do we need to like reset ourselves? Like, go upstairs, take a deep breath, reset, and then re-engage in the world. Like, how are you choosing to participate in the world today, right? And how are you choosing to show up for yourself today? And sometimes it is not like in an abrupt way, but articulating like, hey, I noticed that. Did you notice it? And could we try again? Like, could we say it in a different way?
Yeah, that's some really good insight. And I think that the negative self-talk is a big one. And I always say, and this isn't really talking about, this isn't like the talk aspect, but even the thoughts, I always say that like your thoughts dictate the tone of your environment. And it's so true. But yeah, those are all some great words of advice. And I think another big thing that I see being an issue in like reverse diets, especially like that first month post show, is that all or nothing mindset with competitors. Like, they get into that reverse diet, they have really great intentions, they're like, I'm gonna crush it, I'm gonna hit every macro from the get-go that my coach gives me in my post show plan. And then what happens is they have a little minor slip up or a little hiccup, and it's like, then that negative self-talk comes into play. Dang, I'm the worst, like, whatever you want to say about yourself. And then they have that minor hiccup and it turns into something a lot bigger than that, right? It's almost like if they're not 100%, they're 0%. So I see the all or nothing mindset being something that really, hurts a lot of people, specifically that first month post show. And, as competitors, we're just a lot more vulnerable.
Yeah. I think being able to say, like, who told you that? Like, when people say, I know I'm just failing at this. Who told you that? Who said that to you? Because I surely didn't. Like, as your coach, I didn't tell you that. So who said that? And is that like a feeling, or is that a fact? And if it's a feeling, you got a lot of control over that. Like, you can absolutely take that and change that. So pulling up that card of like feeling versus fact, like, is this a feeling or a fact? And like, what are we going to kind of take hold of? And then how are we going to move forward?
And I think this is helpful, especially if you're an experienced coach, where you can help people navigate through this. Because I have a bunch of people going through reverses right now, and it's really interesting to see the dynamics of it. Because I'll have some competitors to be like, oh, I just screwed up so bad this week. It's like, I did this, I did that. And it's like, okay, you were off by just a little bit. And this is reverse. This is not an issue. We are totally fine here. Then I'll have some competitors and I have to talk and be like, hey, look, I love how dialed in and locked in you are to this here, but like, give yourself a little bit of grace here. Was it perfect? No. Do I expect you to be perfect? No. Was it pretty damn close to perfect? Yeah. We're good here. If we can repeat this here on out for the next 6-7 weeks, I'll be jumping up and down with joy. Let's keep this going. And then on the other side, I have some people that justify their poor decisions, right? Where they will overeat and they're like, well, I had this happen and this stressed me and this did and this did. And they're up like 18 pounds in a week and a half. And then I have to have very serious come to Jesus meetings with these people where it's like, okay, I understand you have things going on here, but we really got to dial this back in here, because if we do not, our off season is going to be far from optimal here at this point. Like, I understand you have things going on here. trust me, like some of the stories I hear too, I'm like, if I was in your boat, I would have probably been the exact same thing. And I've done this a long time, right? Like serious stuff, right? Like it's hard, but it's eventually gets to the point. It's like, okay, now let's reel this back in. And we have to be honest with them while being supportive and understanding why they're at the point they are, but trying to get them back on track. Because if not, 3 months down the road, they're going to be kind of kicking themselves. So it's not, of course, the perfection of it. We're all going to screw up at things. We all are, right? It's unless you are, there's probably a few people that don't, but most people do. And when in bodybuilding is literally just the consistency of when you screw up, getting back on the ball. Like that's all it is. And the more you can do that, the more successful you'll kind of be.
Yeah. That psychological distancing tool is so important during to provide, I talked about to provide perspective and clarity and logical thinking, making sure that we have logical thinking. So when there's that negative self-talk or even the excuses or permission to mess up or whatever you want to call it, being able to provide that psychological distancing. So you could have them say, all right, well, if I did this, what would you tell me? If this is how I sent you my check-in, what response would you give me? Or say, you could use saying from a friend, if a friend were to tell you this and this is their check-in, what would you tell that friend? Or could you use your own? Sometimes I have my clients use their own name, to snap them out of it. I'll use myself as a example, but say I stepped on the scale went up 2 pounds, and then I started internally horrible, bad, right? And then I could be like, all right, Danika, let's be honest. You didn't sleep well. You didn't get enough water yesterday. You drink soy sauce before bed, whatever, right? The scale's up and you're about to get your cycle. Speaking it out loud to provide that psychological distancing allows them to have better perspective and better logical thinking. So then from that, then they can put in action steps to keep moving forward.
I think you just hit a nail on the head right there. That made so much sense with all of it. It's separating that emotional thought and logical thought and separating those two things. And emotionally, it's going to be a roller coaster, right? With the hormones and everything else, you're emotionally going to be a roller coaster. So almost trying your best to shut off that emotional part and look at the logical side, which honestly is, how guys and girls are wired different. Probably why guys have a little bit easier time with this than females do, because guys typically run more logical, females run a little bit more emotional on things. And so it makes a lot of sense, right? Why some of that could end up happening with it. And in looking at each option is neither good or bad, but does this serve me and my goal with that? And say, sometimes we do stuff that doesn't serve us. I drink alcohol, right? I eat like crap sometimes. Is that serving my goal of bodybuilding? No. Is it serving my goal of being happy in life? Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's the same concept of, and I do this all the time, and I can call myself out on it at this point. And I know a lot of my clients will do this, where it's you get, you have a check-in 1 week and you love the way you look. And then 7 days later, you take your progress pictures and you could feel the complete opposite. Or sometimes it even happens day to day, especially, when you're really early on in that reverse diet. You could feel one extreme way about yourself one day, and then in the matter of 24 hours, it is you feel the complete opposite. And that,
me yesterday and today, yes.
Logically, you have to sit there and really ask yourself, okay, in 24 hours, what really could have changed that drastically with my appearance, right? And so I always ask myself that, and I always tell my clients this too, or even if it's just in a span of a week or 7 days, it's what could have really changed that much in 7 days to, drastically change your appearance? Unless you're going out and you're eating 20,000 calories every day, that's one thing, right? But if you stayed structured and regimented on your plan, you hit all of your, you controlled all of your controllables, as I always say, what could have really changed with your physical appearance in 7 days, right? And so having that logic and really asking yourself that, it's okay, that's right. I probably have these kind of goggles with how I see myself right now. And maybe I need to just come back tomorrow with a fresh set of eyes, or next week with a fresh set of eyes. But I see that a lot with clients, where it's just 1 week they'll feel really good about their pictures. The next week, they could look like the exact same, and they feel the complete opposite. So it's really funny how our brain kind of toils with us like that.
Yeah, I think it is important to realize like the measurables, like what we are measuring, and if they are becoming too toxic, that like it's okay to remove some measurables. And like it's okay if like we're not yet ready to, if say the scale is becoming too toxic and that's like penetrating into like our self-worth and like how we're going through our day-to-day and it's really impacting our daily life, then we can remove that variable for a second until we are ready to re-engage in that without that distorted kind of outlook on it or how much emotion we're putting into it, right? So I think it is important to remind ourselves like it's okay to also talk to your coach and say like, this is a little bit, this doesn't really feel very comfortable for me to weigh myself all the time and to see it come up. Is it okay if we don't use this form of measurement during the time while I transition? Like, I just feel like it's more toxic than beneficial for me. And it's okay to know where you're at in that state of change, in that readiness for change, right? And to advocate for yourself. Like, part of it too is not feeling like shamed about it. Like, if you're struggling, open up, like talk about it and be able to like acknowledge, because 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, you're not alone. Like, and probably your coach has experienced it to some extent or another. So being able to open up and say like, hey, right now, this is what I'm feeling, thinking, experiencing, like that may allow you a better ability to approach it.
Yeah, so I have a Facebook group for my clients, and it's so funny how sometimes one of my clients will post something and like what they're struggling with, and it's like boom, 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 like 10 plus responses are like, oh my God, I'm dealing with the same thing. Here's what's helped me. So I think it's really hard to sometimes reach out for help when you need it, or to vocalize what you're struggling with, whether it be like to your coach, to your support system. But you'd be surprised, maybe that person has experienced the same thing. And I think it's really important to, remind our listeners that it's very easy when you're going in that phase, like when you're transitioning from prep to improvement season. It's really hard, or it's really easy to sometimes feel like a failure those first couple of weeks if you deviate from a plan and to not check in with your coach, right? Because you think, oh, well, I didn't follow the plan anyways, I'm not going to check in, right? Or sometimes it's really hard to own up to your mistakes and to check in and be like, yeah, I didn't follow the protocol. But I think that, nothing bad is going to come from checking in if you have a good coach, right? Now, I would not say if your coach is going to shame you and put you down, like that coach is not a good situation for you. But a good coach is not going to shame you or put you down for checking in and owning up to what maybe you did wrong. But I always tell my clients, like, think of your check-ins, not that I'm a therapist or anything, but think of them as therapy sessions. Because if you had a really crappy week, would you skip a therapy session? No, like you would go to that therapy session because you need it even more. Same with check-ins. Like if you had a really bad week, struggle to hit the protocol, struggle to do whatever it was, like you should want to check in even more, because your coach should be able to help you to kind of pivot or to come up with some good strategies to get you back on track. So that way you don't just continue to dig yourself deeper and deeper into a hole.
Yeah. It also gives it power, like, right? Like whatever you're struggling with, that challenge, you're giving it more power if you're just like hiding it and like not talking about it. And most often you're just giving it a little bit more power to dictate how you interact, right? And how you engage with your coach client relationship and everything like that. If you kind of release it, like it's out in the open, like you kind of are in control now. Like you're now in your driver's seat instead of it being in the driver's seat. And now you and your coach can navigate those challenges and struggles together.
And I know I have a lot of my clients that listen to this podcast, and luckily, a lot of them will check in. The vast majority will check in if they've had bad weeks. And nine times out of 10, it's like, I'm embarrassed to say this, but, and it starts like that. And almost every situation, it turns into a teaching moment for me to help them and let them know, hey, you missed a little bit. It's not the end of the world. Trust me. Let's get back on the ball. Let's be in a good spot and let's push forward with it. Like, it's my job is a coach and a physique coach, right? Is to get you to where you want to go, whatever that goal is, right? Whatever that goal you tell me that goal is, that's what I'm trying to get there for you. Part of that is the mental aspect of it, right? It's a huge part of it. It's not just what you eat and what how you train. It's like what's going on inside your old noggin too. So being honest with me a lot of times, because we work with a lot of people and I've experienced so many of these things myself. And I'm so immersed in the industry, especially on the bodybuilding side of things, that, chances are I've seen it, I've come across it, I understand it, and I'm going to be the last person that's going to jump down your throat on it for sure. Now, if it's 4 weeks in a row of the same thing, and it's more turns into more excuses, then it's my job to say, hey, okay, let's knock it off the excuses at this point and let's kind of get rolling with it. That's also the job, right? To call people, call a spade with that. But those are so seldom. Almost every occasion, it's more me talking them off the ledge, being like, okay, you're going to be okay. Like, be kinder to yourself here. If you think you have to be perfect all the time, or you think you miss 2 meals, like everything, your muscle is going to get up and run away. Why are you doing this? Do you want to live in a prison the rest of your life? Like, you're building yourself this prison, like, and that's not good for you or for anyone in your life with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times like clients will submit check-ins that it's like, oh, hate to say this, or I'm embarrassed to say this, I'm ashamed to say this, but and then I send them their video back and they'll
They're
respond.
so happy.
They're like, oh my God. They're like, that is exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you so much. I feel so much better going into the week ahead. Whereas like if you don't check in and you don't tell your coach those things, you're not going to get that pep talk. You're not going to get that learning experience. And guess what? You're probably going to continue to dig yourself deeper and deeper into a hole of negative self-talk, deviation from the plan, as that's easy to do if you aren't showing up for yourself every week or showing up to your coach. And, as coaches, we can't help we can't help you if we don't know what's going on, right? Like we can only work with what we're being told. And so that goes back to like, you should, when you're hiring a coach, make sure you feel comfortable with that person, right? If you wouldn't go to them, and admitting that, hey, I deviated from the plan, like if you don't feel comfortable enough to go to that person saying that, maybe it's not the right coach for you. Because I think that's a really important aspect of a successful client coaching relationship.
And also even if you don't feel comfortable, give your coach, and this is for anyone that's my client, any of our clients, or coach of anyone, give them an opportunity to show their true colors to you. Give them that chance. Don't be afraid to do it. I get being afraid to do it. I understand that. Like, you don't want to let it down. Like, I understand that portion of it, but give them the opportunity to show you how they're going to react to it. If they react like a dick, then cool. That's just information from my bank to know about this person right here. Maybe this isn't a good fit. But like you said, Lexie, I don't like it. Obviously, I want everyone to be perfect all the time, right? In a perfect world, always, like, of course, right? That's never going to happen. So I enjoy getting check-ins like that because it gives me an opportunity to help them in a way other than just the physique realm of things. I actually enjoy them. I get those. I'm like, man, that sucks, but I can't wait to send this message and then send it. And then almost every occasion they send back, they're like, thank you so much. It's exactly, like you said, it's exactly what I needed to hear. They just need a little pick me up. Right. And then they get right back on the ball. They end up killing it. Like and if they don't, then maybe it's just not a time in their life to be doing something like this. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
It's totally okay.
Yeah, I think, all of these points are so great. I feel like we could talk on this topic for so long, and I almost feel like maybe I would love to bring Danika back on and maybe just do like a part 2 to this as well. Like if we get some really good questions, maybe when we post this, like if you have any questions, or any thing that we touched on in this episode that you want us to elaborate further on, I think it would be really awesome to bring Danika back on in an upcoming episode. So if you guys would be interested in that, like comment on our YouTube channel if you're watching, or just let us know. But we've been going at it for a little while now. Danika, do you have anything that you want to just kind of some final thoughts or anything in general that you want to kind of leave us off with?
Yeah, I think that it's important to recognize that there's a lot of transitions in life that are going to be hard. Like most aren't super smooth. Let's be honest. When I transitioned to a parent, I wasn't like, this is great. Like it was hard. There was many challenges, even transitioning from like college to real world. Like, I was like, hold on, like, right. You have to, there are parts that are going to be really challenging, but it's also exciting, right? Because a transition into a new phase means that there's more opportunities that are going to come your way and you're going to be exposed to. You're going to be able to grow in a lot of different ways, right? Like physically and mentally. And when we kind of view it as like, oh, cool, this transition, there may be some hiccups, challenges, bumps, roadblocks, whatever. But also with this comes cool opportunities too. So if I could lean a little bit into that and a little bit into like, there's uncertainty that exists, but with uncertainty also comes like excitement and, like I said, like just opportunities and many different areas, then that's what I can hold on to. And that can be my leverage point to continue to move forward.
Uncertainty brings opportunity. And that's what a lot of people need to understand with that. And look, a lot of us like certainty, right? Well, then a lot of us do. Everyone does, because it's a comfort zone, right? We don't grow from that. Everyone says they want to grow, they want to be better, they want all this stuff, right? But then the first challenge that hits, it's I don't want to do this. That's how you grow. That's how you grow.
I always say change is not uncomfortable because you're incapable of fulfilling it. It's just uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar territory that you haven't yet endeavored. So I think when you put it that way, it's like, oh, okay, lean into that discomfort, knowing that it's going to yield growth and that it's temporary too. You're not always going to feel uncomfortable for the rest of your life. It's, these little moments of discomfort that kind of dissipate over time as you do more of them.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to focus on, I know this whole episode was about, moving into an off season or moving out of a prep, but we have Danika on here obviously for a reason. With that is it's the mental part of it that's so tough, right?
Yeah.
And that's honestly, this sport of bodybuilding in general is mental. The whole reason I got into bodybuilding, number one, like this is because I wanted to look good. I thought I was going to give me some chicks or something back in the day. That was part of it. And the other big part of it was, I played football in college and I had that goal. I had that strive. I had all that camaraderie. I had all that. But I wanted to do it because I knew it was going to be so hard mentally. I wanted something to challenge myself mentally. I wanted that. And I didn't want it work-based. I didn't want it relationship-based. I wanted it voluntary, that I chose to put myself in something difficult. That's why I wanted to do it. And, I think if you approach things like that, like, hey, I know this is going to be difficult to get in here and it's really going to be hard, but if I can get kind of through this with it, and it is hard. Body image is a big thing, right? Especially in today's society. But if you can get through this part of it, shoot, what's Aunt Karen telling you look a little fluffy going to do? Ain't going to do nothing to you after that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to focus on that mindset part even before, right? Like even before starting something, like you should always want to improve that, because that is your vehicle to everything, right? Like good relationships, making sure that like you're showing up for yourself, your career, your athletic endeavors. Your mindset is like the thing that like is like pulling you through. And if you can also be able to flex that and train that, like that is awesome. You can achieve so much more when you are able to really make sure that you're checking in with that and training that as well.
And if you look at bodybuilding is not just growing on the physical side, but the most growth you will get in this, if you accept it and you lean into it, is the mental part. It'll make you a better person. It'll make you a stronger person. But if you ignore that and push it to the side, you're going to alienate a lot of people. So it's a big focus. And I think that's something we should probably talk about more and focus on, is the mental side of things, because it is so big.
It is. Yeah. That's why I would love to have you, Danika, on another episode. I feel like all the listeners are probably going to agree, but we'd love to hear, like, if you're listening, if there is anything, you guys, that like you want us to protect or like particularly bring Danika back on for topic wise, let us know, whether it be like, you know, something in particular with mindset, just whatever it may be. We'd love to have her back on because she offers a lot of really great insights. So we appreciate you being on today, Danika.
Thank you so much. I would love
Yeah.
to be on as much
Thanks
as
for coming, Danica. It was a lot of fun. A lot
It
of
was.
fun.
And even some things you said, I was like, oh, I really like that. I need to kind of apply that to my own self, right? But no, this was absolutely great. So those of you who are listening, if you are listening, we would really appreciate it if you left our podcast a 5-star review. And also, if you're listening on YouTube or watching us on YouTube, we'd love for you to comment, tell us what your favorite part of this episode was. And also, we are going to, we'll give you guys a little bit more information on this moving forward, but I did want to give a little shout out for our upcoming live event here in Tampa, Florida in, I think it's February, Command the Stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we do still have lots of tickets available for that. It is an incredible experience if you want just like a really awesome seminar. It's awesome. And we'll probably end up making a little mini episode talking more about it in an upcoming episode. But any final thoughts, you guys, before we tap out of here?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the Command the Stage thing. I think if you are interested in competing, or newer competitor especially, I think it's like a crash course on this, and you get to learn. If a lot of reasons people hire as a coach is because they don't want to waste time, right? Trying to figure it out on their own with it. And they don't want to just keep spinning their wheels and want to make sure what they're doing is the right way. This is kind of like a crash course on not necessarily the diet and nutrition side, but everything else having to do with competing. And there's a lot to it. And a lot of people don't realize how much there is to go to it. A lot of good presenters, a lot of on-hand teaching, especially when it comes to training. I know I'm doing a presentation on some stuff there. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So I highly recommend it.
Fun. It's a great way to like meet people too in the industry. If you feel like you're kind of like a lone wolf, like in this and getting into this industry, because it can sometimes be that way at first. It's a great way to meet friends. So yeah, and you don't have to be a part of Team ProPhysique to attend to. It is open to everybody. So we'll put out an episode soon, going a little bit more in depth on that. But if you guys have made it this far, we really appreciate you guys listening. And hopefully we'll have Danika back on here very soon. But hope you guys have a great day wherever you are at, and we will catch you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
See y'all.
Bye.